Why, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I
Thank
know
you.
we don't have a lot of time, so I want to get started immediately. And I want to start with something that just came down this morning. A judge ruled in favor of 35 Ohio gyms and fitness centers that sued Dr. Acton over her order to keep these facilities closed during the stay-at-home order. So now technically they can reopen ahead of the May 26th date that you had previously set. So I'm curious what's your reaction to this ruling, and are you going to fight that?
Well, frankly, we don't think it's a huge deal. The judge did say that the uh, prescribed way of these gyms to operate was fine. He thought that was okay. He ordered it to open them to open now. That's 6 days. So, frankly, we don't think it's a big deal. What I think is different about what we have done as we open different businesses, and virtually everything is open now, is we put a working group together of people who, for example, in that case, people who run gyms. We had people who run gyms along with health experts who got together. We asked them to get together, and they came up with protocols. And what the judge said today, or in the ruling, was that the protocols were good. We think our protocols are very good, and that we're opening up in a very safe way across Ohio. And frankly, this is an exciting time as people, get out and start going back to restaurants and start going back to bars and getting their hair cut.
There you go. Memorial Day right around the corner, Governor. You just lifted the state's stay-at-home order and the travel restrictions that were still in place. So what's your guidance to folks who probably or may see your actions as giving them the green light to now get together with family and friends this weekend at those Memorial Day cookouts that we have been so accustomed to going to now for years?
Well, we certainly want people to have fun and families to get together. It does not change the fact that the virus is still there. It is very contagious. Ohioans have done a great job for the last 2 months in staying back, keeping the 6 foot distance. We now have people who are going out in public who will wear some facial covering. These are all very, very positive things. And, we would just ask people, please continue to be careful, continue to do that. If you have a particular health problem, or if you're over 60, 65, 70, be exceedingly careful. For the 25-year-olds who are out watching this, you may not worry about getting this yourself, but if you do get it, you're a carrier, and sometimes you get it and you don't even know that you have it. And then you go see your grandmother, and then your grandmother gets it. And then for your grandmother, it's much, much, much more serious. So we're just asking people to, use their common sense, try to keep that distance. We think that in Ohio, we can do two things at once, and that is to open the economy back up, get people back to work, and at the same time, also to continue to protect our fellow Ohioans.
Now, even though we have that stay-at-home order that has now been lifted, you are still recommending that mass gatherings not exceed 10 people. So I'm wondering, what does this mean for all those upcoming weddings, concerts, live sporting events here in the state? Can we expect to see that ban or recommendation not to have mass gatherings exceed 10 people until we get a coronavirus vaccine?
For weddings, funerals, we tell people to be careful, but there's never been an order about weddings or funerals. Now, there's been orders in regard to wedding receptions, but not for the wedding itself. What we're saying is that people just need to be careful. I mean, we're probably not going to be seeing, much as we love concerts. Fran and I were set, and the kids go to see Garth Brooks and last weekend, and that would have been, a lot of fun. But the bigger concerts, the concerts themselves, I don't think we're going to see that for some time, because that is where you can really get very, very significant spread. And, it really comes down to what we do ourselves. I mean, we all want to go back, see kids go back to school in the fall. We want to continue to move forward. What we don't want is what we've seen in Europe, where they shut down, then they opened up, and everybody's happy about that. And now some of these countries are starting to shut down again. And we do not want to be in that position. So, we're looking at the data every day. We're looking at hospital admissions. Hospital admissions are pretty flat. They've been flat for probably 4 weeks now. We're seeing about the same thing with the deaths. We're seeing the same thing with the new cases. So we'd like to see that curve go down, but we're certainly glad it's not going up. So we're really at a plateau. The replication rate, which means if I get it on an average, how many people do I infect? It used to be 2. So in other words, 1 to 2, I was infecting 2 people. Now it's 1 to 1. That's a lot better. We're going to continue to look at that number, because if that number starts to creep up, that's not a good sign. That means it's really starting to spread again significantly in society. So we're all in this together. We battle on. I'm optimistic that we can do these 2 things at once. Ohioans have done great for the last 2 months.
I want to touch a little bit more on schools. You mentioned that a little bit in that response. And earlier this week, you said that you and school leaders across the state are planning for students to return to in-person classroom instruction in the fall. So with that being said, barring any major developments with the coronavirus vaccine, what makes it safe for students to return to school when just months ago you were closing all the school buildings across the state due to concerns over the virus spreading?
Well, our original concern, of course, we always have been concerned about deaths. The danger with kids, by and large, if you look at the data, is not so much that you worry about the kids, although there are exceptions. I mean, we're seeing some kids get sick, but by and large, kids don't get very sick from this. But the real concern is, and it's the same concern you have for daycare. So let's say you got 30 kids in a classroom. One kid comes in, he's showing no symptoms, but he's carrying it. And that's one of the things that we find with this virus. A lot of times they have no symptoms, but they're carrying it. He spreads it to, let's say, 25 kids in that classroom. They go back to their homes, and so that spreads out. So that is why, we closed schools initially. We've flattened the curve. We've been able to keep the surge from occurring. We know that there are kids out there who got a good education this last month. The teacher's done a great job. We also know we have kids who, in rural parts of the state, for example, who may not have internet. Some in the inner city do not. And so they may not have gotten the same quality education as somebody else's kids did. So we worry about that. So this is all a balance. We're trying to balance these things. And we hope that kids will be able to go back to school in the fall. What we've asked the schools to do is to plan and come up with different ways of doing it, different ways of protecting kids and protecting the teachers and the custodians and anyone who works in that school. So keeping the distance as much as possible. And I know from talking to superintendents and principals, they're working on this very, very hard.
Governor DeWine, here in Cincinnati last weekend, there were multiple examples of people crowded into outdoor spaces at bars, clearly not following those social distancing guidelines. Do you think it was a mistake to not put a capacity limit on these spaces as we're in this early phase of reopening? And what are we doing to make sure we don't have those same problems this weekend when restaurants open for in-person? You can dine inside the restaurants once again.
Well, we hope we don't see this. We saw some of it last weekend. The person who runs the restaurant or the bar, it's incumbent upon them to control the situation. And so one of the things that the orders that were put out, and again, these are orders that came from people in the restaurant industry, people who came in the bar industry. They wrote them as the best practices. And what they've said is, particularly, let's say, in regard to a bar, you have to have a place for that person to sit. The idea of people standing around in a big bunch of people is exactly what we don't want, because you get significant spread when that happens. There's just no way of avoiding it. So spacing the tables out, just like we're doing now in restaurants, with a distance or a barrier or something, that's what the bars have to do as well. And I talked with Mayor Cranley a lot about that. He and I have shared back and forth, concerns. We don't want to have a heavy hand. We want to be able to inform the bar owner and the restaurant owner, hey, this is what you need to do. But last weekend there were citations issued. This week there will be citations issued again if that does in fact occur. And I would just say again, it's not so much the orders I put out as it is Ohioans doing what's right. And I know some people, don't want to wear a mask out in public. I get it, but Fran and I do when we go out, and really the protection is not for you. The protection is for the other guy. So when you go into whether it's a bar or you go into a grocery store, and let's say you're in a grocery store, everybody in these stores is now wearing the mask, and so they're doing that really to protect you because that's the way it works. But you need to protect them too, and we have consideration, I think, for the employees who are out there working every single day that we come in contact with.
Something, Governor, I really want to touch on. Whenever we run a story about unemployment benefits here on Local 12, we hear from our viewers who say they are still waiting to get their check, or they even say they can't get through to actually speak to an agent if they have a question for them about these benefits. Do you feel like that's acceptable at this point? And what do you say to those folks who are out of work, they're out of money, and they are still waiting on this check?
Well, I say I'm sorry. We apologize. We started with 44 people answering the phones and processing these claims, and that was just fine until the coronavirus came along. We now have, I think, about 1,500 people who are answering the phones and trying to resolve these. Every claim, the law says that you just can't take the information down and ship out the check. You've got to verify employment. You've got to do all the things that need to be verified, what the law says. As of yesterday, I think 91% of these had been dealt with. That if you're the 9%, I understand that is very, very frustrating. And so I apologize. We're doing the best we can to get these out. I know that if people don't have the money, that's a huge, huge problem. The only good news is that when you get your check, that check will be backdated. You will get the full pay that you deserve. But I know that's not good consolation if you don't have the money to pay your bills this month or this week, and I apologize for that.
And Governor, so many people with coronavirus symptoms here in Ohio still cannot get a test. How far away are we from the day where anyone with symptoms can get a coronavirus test?
Well, we're moving towards that, and we want to be able to do that out in the general public. We also want to be able to do that in our nursing homes. We've got the National Guard involved now in swabbing people in nursing homes. We'll be moving the Guard out in the next couple of days to do that. We are now running about 9,000 tests, somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 tests every day. That's a lot more than it was 2 weeks ago. It's not enough. And we need to get that number up dramatically. So I was working on that this morning. My team's working on it. That is going to come. It certainly is not coming soon enough, but we're working on it. And I think we're going to see those numbers go up dramatically. It's so very important because what we do when you find someone that is in fact tested positive, you do what's called the tracing, and it's all voluntary. As far as the people who have been found to be positive, they tell basically who they've come in contact with, and then that way you're able to isolate the virus and protect people. And that's an essential part of what we need to be doing. We are doing, but as we get the tests up, we're going to continue to increase that tracing, and that's how we get aggressive, really get aggressive towards this virus and get on the offense more.
And Governor DeWine, I want to touch on nursing homes. Why aren't you releasing the number of COVID-19 deaths per individual nursing home at this point?
We are releasing a lot of data. We're releasing if it is in a nursing home, which I made that order over a month ago. I think we think it's important to people know that if there is the coronavirus in a particular nursing home, if you're going to put your dad or somebody in there, you need to know that. In smaller communities, if there's a death, there's a concern about disclosing information about that particular individual if it's a small nursing home, a small number of people. But the basic information about the fact that a nursing home does have COVID-19 in it is certainly something that we have told the nursing homes that it has to be public, and we are making that public.
All right, Governor DeWine, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it. Please give Fran our best, as we know today is her birthday.
It's her birthday today. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.